Okay, well, we'd like to welcome Larry Kinsella as our speaker tonight. For those who don't know Larry, he's been involved in experimental archaeology since the 1970s, started out with flint knapping and expanded into other kinds of tool making and experimental work, and he's even been recognized by the International Archaeological Organization called the Society for American Archaeology. He got a special award from him several years ago. A lot of things he's made have been on display in various museums, and he's just been sort of handyman, learning the techniques and new ideas about how tools and things were made and used. So we'll let Larry carry on from here.
Alrighty. How do I change the slides? Or do I just yell and you change it?
Just me and you, Angela.
Alrighty. There we go. So, thank you for having me. I'm so sorry about the delay. The jump drive was right next to the other jump drive sitting at my computer, so sorry about that. Anyway, Chip-A-Canoe was started 35 years ago. I mentioned at Rabbit Stick Rendezvous about I had an axe class, and I mentioned that I had seen a National Geographic article that showed two men building a dugout canoe with chainsaws, and it was 6 full pages in National Geographic. And I thought, man, what a waste to do that for chainsaws. If they did it with stone tools, that would really be something. So this has been festering in me for a long time. And it wasn't until Myron Crentney at Rabbit Stick 2 years ago said, well, you better do it before you croak. So that's how this came about. And I'm going to kill him next time I see him. So next slide. So this is what we were trying to disprove, is that trees burning down a live tree, although somebody has told me there's a great video out there of doing it rather efficiently, I have to see it. How did the log get split in half? Whenever people are building a dugout canoe with fire, you notice the log is always split in half. They never start with a rounded log and build a fire on top of that. So, burning a tree to length. What is this tool? It looks like Big Mama, but I don't know, it just went into it. How were they able to lift such a heavy log onto those supports? We know how heavy that log was. There ain't no lifting that log onto that thing. So this is a Theodore de Bry, 1528, 1598, John Knight, 1585, 1593, woodcut, and this one's been colorized naturally. So things we had to do ahead of the project that most people don't think about: get insurance, arrange for tree to be topped out professionally. This was near some power lines, so on my property, and it was next to my neighbor's property, so it needed to be topped out, and that's what we did. Thanks to Illinois State Archaeological Society, they got us somebody $900 cheaper, so we were $900 to the black, which we will get rid of pretty quickly. Next slide. So, in order to get things going, we wanted this to be the most documented experimental archaeology canoe ever. So there's actually 2 more farms that they're on here, in fact 3. So what we did is we had a toolmaker's list. Oh, first they got a questionnaire. What's your experience? Questions like that. So we knew where they were from. That was all on another farm. And then, do you consider yourself an expert, a novice, or mid-range? And the people who wrote expert would now write novice. So, then they made a toolmaker's list. If you're going to use tools on the project, would you please list them so we know what the tool is? So we have a list of everybody's tools. Then we had the measurement form for all the tools, length, width, measure what it weighed, things like that. And some of this we go back to again at the end to have other measurements taken near the end of the project. And then we had a daily form that you filled out. Now, some people would have to fill out 6 or 8 of those forms during the day, because they worked and then took a break and then worked. So, and then we had a supervisor's form that double checked that one. So the supervisor would then write the participant's name and the hours here. So if there's a mistake, we can kind of double check ourselves. Learning redundancy from archaeology. So next, please. And we made a little canoe replica, just an idea of what was going on. This is while they were topping the trees. You can see all the limbs there. I had a couple of them make nice little gouges in my driveway. The tree was over 100 feet tall, and it was a little breezy that day. That guy was waving back and forth. I was scared to death for him, but he did a great job. And supposedly he wore a GoPro, and I haven't got those films yet, but that ought to be kind of interesting. And this is what it looked like after we got it all cleaned up and ready to go. And it was a tulip poplar tree. We wanted to follow the tree just this side of this bush down here so we wouldn't hit the bush or especially hit the road. Next. So a bunch of guys showed up a day early on July 4th. We were supposed to start on July 5th. So this is Myron, and Myron was the guy that talked me into this whole thing. Well, he came by himself, and then Scogan came from Wisconsin. Trenton just walked up the driveway with a backpack on his back from Arizona, and Grizz came from California. So we have an eclectic group right here already, and then Glenn showed up. So what they're doing is, Scogan here got a bunch of basswood fibers, and they're laying it out on the grass. Trenton is separating them into 2 strands, and then here we're twisting. You notice this? I couldn't get a good picture. This is there's a little hole here with the rope in it, and they just spin it and twist the fibers up. Real easy. They had 3 or 4 of those, worked beautifully. And then we made strands out of that. Next. So the strands had to be separated, so we tied them separately, and then here we are. I think he's putting a splice into this one. This is where Scogan has got this 3-ply. We made 2 3-ply strands, and then made 1 rope out of it. And here's the crew. This is Glenn, Trenton, me, Scogan, Grizz, and Myron. Next. So then we found out that we did the rope exactly backwards. We twisted it the wrong way. So we untwisted everything, and then we went back. And what they're doing here is kind of interesting to watch the video, because we needed these guys to twist the same amount as what we needed. So I'm in the middle there kind of separating fibers, but Scogan is back there looking at the rope as it goes through that block. And so if they would all 1, 2, 3, and they twist with that rhythm, and then all of a sudden Scogan would say stop, and they say number 3, twist more, and then he say stop. Okay, oh, you go again, and that's how he kept the strands straight. So we made a 70-foot basswood rope. Took us the afternoon. It probably would have taken half that time if we just twisted it the right way originally. This was the biggest rope any of them had ever made, so that was cool. But it was a really nice basswood rope. Next. All right, then the 5th came. It was a madhouse, actually. Thank God that we got all those forms. Nora and Eddie, my God, they were great. Veronica, right?
Candace.
Okay. And Rick were great. They, one of them weighed, the other one made casts of the bits. Here we had a table for people to fill out their forms, and over here was Norma and Candace, signing people in. You can see all the tables that came in just at once. So I had already done my tools and somebody else's tools. This is Emil. He showed up right then, brought these tools. He's from Israel. And he was the one that came the longest. He's staying in Massachusetts right now. And his family is in dire straits over there in Israel. He's been asking for bulletproof vests. Anybody? I have no idea. Okay, next slide. So I took the first chop at about 8:15. We were a little bit late. I was supposed to start at 8. The first thing I said was, "Oh no." This tulip tree was harder than I thought. The bark was bad enough, but boy, you get into the wood, it was a tough wood. I did not expect that. I've used tulip poplar on construction sites all the time, but it's all kiln dry, and it's nice and soft. Oh, it's just wonderful. Well, this is not that. So I started, then Myron came in, did some chopping, Emil, and Skogan. Now Skogan is a beast. This guy, you could tie a rope around his feet and he'd be a beaver. My God, he was amazing. And he lives in Wisconsin and uses a steel axe every day for almost 7 or 8 hours a day. He cuts down trees for a living, and man, does he know how to use a steel axe. Well, he really knows how to use a stone axe too. Notice there's no babying it. This is walloping this tree. If we have time at the end, I'll show you a little, maybe 2 or 3 minute clip of what actually happened. And it's amazing. We had no idea that these tools could withstand this kind of stress. The problem is, within 15 minutes, we all looked at each other and said, we bought the wrong tools. These tools need to be bigger, the handles need to be longer, and that made me jump back to the Grossman cache, where those axes were bigger. And I can see that those type of axes would have been perfect for this type of project. But we had to work with what we were working with. Next. And Glenn, Bob Isingham, and Richard Isingham are cousins, and live up in northern Illinois. Glenn lives in Virginia. I used to live in New York. One hell of a tool maker. Joe lived in Iowa, and he really had a lot of axes, but he was still very much of a novice. But boy, did he wall up that tree. All right, next. Oh, I forgot to point that out too. You notice in the pictures, you'll see these clocks. We have clocks in all 4 directions, and so when you take a picture, if you're back far enough, you can tell what time it is during the day, and that works beautiful. I've gone through about 2,000 or 3,000 photos already, and I'm only on the 14th. I started the 15th today, so I've got 12 more days to go, and so I probably got at least 7,000 photographs. But boy, having that clock in here, I can label photographs a lot easier. You'll notice this. Everybody started to blister, and it wasn't. We haven't gotten into it very far. This is, but I think those were Skogan's blisters. After using steel axes all his life and being so used to it, these stone axes blistered right up. Many people complained about the vibration, something I never would have thought of, and that caused the blisters. Other people just had the thickness of the handle, and some of these you'll see up here on these handles. Well, Big Mama's one of them, where they cut it down to make it thinner, but it's a lot rougher. So as we went, you'll see these people working, but other people are up the hill making new handles. So next.
So you didn't want to use gloves?
No, well, gloves are useless on this kind of stuff. When you're that soaking wet, and the gloves are wet, it actually gets in your way. So we had a first aid kit, and they wrapped their hands in with that, some kind of
Liquid
adhesive tape and a couple other things. Moleskin. Yeah. So here's our table again. We're still getting signed up. On this day, a couple people showed up. Myron is resharpening an axe. We noticed that the axes worked fairly well, but they weren't sharp enough. And you needed something that would get into that cut down like this. If it wasn't sharp enough, it wouldn't grab. So that's why he's sharpening that one. And Eric Suddick showed up. He's from the Illinois State Archaeological Society, one of the members. We've had about 7 or 8 other members that showed up and helped chop. Next. All right, so Don Stormer, Flint Napper from Alton, he showed up. I think this is the 7th. This is the day the tree came down. We call this the world's largest pencil. When you saw it, this little dark tip, the heartwood, that's what it looked like. These are Myron's hands. You can see all the tape. And Scogan's. Next. So this is when the tree fell. And Myron, we posed for this picture because there was enough room to get him under there. But the two of us are so glad that it hit. He could have put a pencil in the ground and it would have driven that pencil down. That's how accurate he was with the tree. And the reason was because this was an elongated hinge right here.
Yeah.
And that's what held. What we did is we tied the rope to it to make sure it wouldn't fall this way. Had 2 people monitoring that rope. And then when it started getting close, we had a bunch of people up the hill. You'll notice all the clocks are gone. So we had people up the hill watching it at 90 degrees and yelling if anything was going to happen. Before that, Myron held a safety meeting and told everybody that the only people that were allowed near the tree were the people chopping it. And that the other people should stay back within, so they can't possibly get hit. That was my biggest worry, was that somebody was going to get hit with this, or it would hit something else and make it fly, and somebody would get hit by that. So when he dropped it, the hooting and hollering, we were really thrilled. It took 3 days. Next, this is the way it splintered. I had this stump in my yard. I can't wait till it snows lightly and I can get a nice Christmassy picture of that. Yeah, nothing like snow and blisters. Next. And there's the crew. If you couldn't get in this picture unless you had blisters on your hands. So, and everybody did. So, it was a really nice group of folks, eclectic. There were people from every kind of life way, I guess, or just different, their jobs and things like that. Next. This is the block day. So everybody broke camp up at the park and went up to Campsville to set up camp there. And then I was supposed to come the next day and bring the log up with the truck. So I'm waiting at 8 o'clock. They were supposed to be there. Nothing. 10 o'clock comes. I get a call. The truck is broke down on the interstate and it'll take 3 weeks to get it fixed. So I spent the whole day on the phone trying to call everybody I could think of. And this was a Saturday. So it would be that they would have to come pick it up on a Sunday. So finally I called the people whose truck broke down. I said, man, this isn't my fault. And I said, can't you recommend somebody? And they recommended a tree place up in Edwardsville. So I called them and they said, well, since it's this company, we'll do it. I said, okay. So see you at 8 o'clock in the morning. Next. So at 8 o'clock the next morning, The truck shows up and it can't lift the load. So I'm on the phone the rest of the day. I should have known that this was going to be a precursor to the rest of my time on the site, because it was. So I called Erlinger Construction. Now Erlinger is somebody that I called 8 months before this project, and he came out and took a look at the tree and said, I don't think we can do that. Well, he got rid of all of his equipment, the Erlinger in Belleville, but the Erlinger in Highland was a relative, and he had a big crane. So what we did is I said, let's have the crane and the truck. The crane will lift it onto the truck, and then the truck will bring it up to Kinsella. And he said, can you unload it? I said, well, I don't know. So we had Myron said, oh yeah, we can do it. Yeah. So thank God we didn't. But I said, well, what would it cost to have the crane follow him all the way up to Kinsella and then unload it up there? He said, well, that's the best thing to do because I don't want my trailer to run. So that was $700. So the 900 now that we were in the black is 200. Okay, next. So here we are with Erlinger's crane unloading it, well, picking it up actually. And then this is unloading it up at McCully. We had a problem. We had this fork at the top and we couldn't roll the log over. When I showed up, everybody was disheartened because they expected almost twice as many people, and there weren't. There were maybe 4 people that showed up. Another 10 were supposed to and never showed. So everybody was really down in the dumps. So the only way we could turn this log over was to take a chainsaw and cut those off. It would have taken 2 or 3 more days to cut those limbs off. So this is where we cheated. Now, if we'd have cut that off before, that first truck would have picked it up. Or second truck. So anyway, we got it up there. There's Grizz taking a break. This is Dave Westcott from Rabbit Stick Rendezvous. Came all the way from Idaho. Let's see, I think that, okay, next. We took the bark off in 20 minutes. It just zipped right off. All right. Yeah. But in order to roll it over, we had to get everybody and push. We rolled it up against these chocks. So, and it was kind of slight hill there. We didn't want it to get away from us and crush anybody. So that's why we're rolling it that way. Then we put that rope along the side, and then this was going to be the top of the canoe. So we put a rope along the side, and then we marked where that rope was. That's how deep we wanted to go to make that area flat for the top of the canoe before we turned it over. So then we started chopping. As we were chopping, tools got hurt. Now what happened is, to make up for the shortness of the handles, we made longer handles. So what we were doing was breaking handles originally. But then once we made longer handles, we started breaking the stones because we were putting too much stress on the stones, especially the way Scogan was named things. So, next. So this is the chopping that we did, cutting the notches in, and then now he's setting sideways and using the axle to try to drive out splinters. So here we are notching all the way down. Oh, and that's right, Loda and Kent came from Rabbit Stick out in Idaho, Colville, Idaho. This was Steve's camera setup. We have one here, one over here, and one back here. We've got at least 350 videos and 7,000 or 8,000 photographs. So I'm so glad we hired him, and he did it dirt cheap. He just told me, he said, Larry, this is such a cool project. I'll work whatever budget you got. So that was wonderful. So the notching was underway next. this is Karen. She was working with Norma the whole time. Thank God we had them. They're back here on the desk with all the paperwork, keeping things straight. You notice that the notching took it down that far, and now when we turn it over, we have a chance to work sideways on it, made the splinters come off. Notice the splinters on the ground, and compare that with the chopping chunks that we had. It's a total different thing. The chopping chunks are indicative of axe use. The splinters are all axes and adzes. Actually, we haven't started with the adzes yet. The Archaeological Field School at Cansville was working 200 yards from us, out in the field over this way. And so whenever we need the log roll, or if they wanted to come help, we would yell and they'd come over and help us with that. Next.
Quick question.
Yes.
How did you do the notching? It looked like you were using some kind of
Just cutting notches with the stone axes across the grain.
okay.
Yeah.
It's using a wedge there.
Oh, well, now that's a different story right there.
Story, yeah.
So, and I hope I got time stuff. Anyway, this
Okay.
Dave is making handles. Michelle is from McCully Heritage Center. She was that was the best place we could have had this thing. Wonderful people, worked really well. Here's Myron making another handle, and here they're chopping. Now Norma told me a little story, and I think this is what happened. There was a lady behind her that was an archaeologist, and she had just retired. And that archaeologist, I think, was Jane Bykster. But Norma didn't remember what she looked like. But I had talked to Jane just a couple minutes before. So Jane was behind Norma and said, you know, I've been an archaeologist for a very long time, and I always understood somewhat why the bits of the tools would have damage to them. But I never understood why the poles would have damage to them. Now with this guy, I know why they had damage to them, because you're beating them. And she said it was worth the whole thing just to see that. So that was something that the rest of us took for granted, and she picked up on right away. All right, next. So then we found, Myron found wedges. That wedges work. So here's a bust of Dad's, by the way, a church one. Probably because it was half too much of a 90-degree angle, but it broke right away. These wedges worked pretty well. He was able to splinter out long pieces going down, but it was very tough on the wedges. And this is Osage orange wedges. I told him if he fire hardened them, put them in a fire and got them black, and then sharpened down, they'd last longer. But he said, we're making this canoe without any fire. So this is an axe that I made for Dave Westcott, and it broke probably this day at the end. Then here's a bunch of the axes and celts. This is one from Pete Davis in Virginia, and boy, it was the axe. Everybody wanted to use that, but it finally broke after a while. Next. So then we had the big pieces of wood that came off, and so was it Karen that had the spaghetti? I think she cooked a bunch of spaghetti. So here's Rick with the spaghetti on a chip of wood for a plate. This is what the wood chips looked like when they were tripping over them all the time, so they piled them up in piles. Here's Myron wedging and Emil adzing. Here's how Trenton was hitting. So he'd really putting a wallop to things too. And then here's an adze that ended up being the best thing we had. We got that from Richard Parker in Massachusetts. He's Mike Gramley told me he was the best stone tool maker ever. Boy, was he. And he sent us 2 of those gouges to use. The one gouge you'll see later on broke a couple times, still was the best tool we had. So, next. So there we are rolling. It was nice when we could roll the canoe back and forth on an angle and chop downward. There's Barry. Now Barry was something else, because the day before Barry showed up, Scogan left. And the whole camp went, the morale just shot to hell. And Barry showed up, and it was like, this guy, he was local from Campsville, just north of town, right? Yeah. And he showed up because he heard about the project, and said, well, you want to work? And boy, he went right to work, and man, did he work. So it was like he gave everybody a boost. Plus, he brought some biscuits and gravy in the morning. He loved to cook, so he gave us some great meals. And boy, thank you, Barry, because you can't believe how down everybody was before you showed up. Here I am cutting lashings for tools. Here's that one bit. You can see the extremely fine edge on that gouge. And it had a little piece out of it. Once a larger piece comes out, we glued it in with miracle glue or whatever. Here's iron wedging again, and here's the bow of the canoe being axed down at an angle. Next. All right, here's Glenn with the beast. He made this gouge, and it was a doozy. Everybody loved it. It was just big. And when you cut with it, he was very good on knots, and he used it on knots a lot. This is one of my axes. I put rawhide shims in the handle because it was starting to sink into the handle too far. And then, maybe 5 hours later, it broke. So here's more wedging. Here's Myron on this must be the 15th, yeah. He had a fire making class and taught people at Campsville. It was Archaeology Day, so he taught people from Campsville and the visitors how to make hand drilled fires. Now, you remember what his hands looked like with all those bandages? And here he had to do a hand drilled fire class. I mean, he was a trooper. And then here's a bunch of the tools lined up: mallets, gouges, celts. And then Karen sitting there doing paperwork. And she worked on the canoe quite a bit too, just like Mark. Next. Well, there she is, okay. There's another tool that broke. That one was Dave Westcott's. We broke the one that broke that I made. They chipped again, and it broke again.
So
But it lasted a while.
Did you sweat a new piece into it somehow?
No, we just used the same bit. It just got shorter.
Oh.
Yeah. And then our table is getting a little ratty looking with as many broken tools, mostly handles. We only broke about 6 or 8 stones altogether, I guess. And then here's Joe finishing up the bow of the canoe. And this one here, it shows you what the bottom of the canoe, where it's about ready to turn it over. We got the bottom of the canoe down. We wanted to flatten it to make it sturdy. If it had been rounded, it would have tipped over when we put it in the water. Next. Okay, so here's the model of the canoe, and the canoe, what we were kind of looking for the bottom. Myron put a keel on the boat, and we held a little meeting. We held a meeting every now and then to discuss what we were going to do. And Myron said, do you feel okay with having the keel on the boat? And I said, well, I've never seen any on a dugout canoe, an original dugout. So then we removed it. So, because he wanted to stay as authentic as possible. And so we took that off with, mostly with the beast. And here the students are again helping us roll. One of the ad splinters, these ads worked so well. They brought large pieces. That really doesn't do it justice. Next. So there's Karen at a moment anyway. And I just thought this picture of the tools on with the wood in the background was pretty cool. Here we got most everybody rolling the log up and then putting chocks underneath to make sure it stays there. And then it's buried again. Rick using adzes or gouges. He's using an adze, but I think Rick's has got a gouge. And then here, I love the look on Karen's face, a note of apprehension as Glenn is driving this stake that she's holding. Next. So here they're gouging, I'm adzing, he's gouging, and he's chopping. So we got all this stuff. He's using the beast to come down this way. With just some more chopping and gouging. And then here's Myron using the beast. And Myron's, he brought the watermelon every day. And man, he'd crack it, sometimes 2 or 3. And crack them, just eating watermelon like crazy. Well, he got a little sick. And he said, I'm never going to eat another watermelon as long as I live. So that day he got to sit back and relax. His camp is right up here. There's the camps along, and there's a bunch of other camps behind us. Next. So Emil, he loved that gouge. In fact, he's an experimental archaeologist that's going to try to get his dissertation done with the University of Exeter that has a great experimental archaeology program. I was under the impression he was going to write up the whole canoe. When we got done, I found out, no, he's only going to write up those gouges, the 2 gouges that really worked really well. So that threw it on me, and so Steve Bowles called and said, I don't know if you know it or not, but the SAA is going to have their meeting in April in New Orleans, and one of the symposiums is on dugout canoes. And he said, I think we should do something for that. And I said, okay. He said, I'll co-author it with you. I said, okay, that's great. So he said, there's one problem. I said, what's that? He said, well, I'm doing a paper on the canoe at Cahokia, and I can't do 2 papers. So you'll have to do the paper, but I can read it if I have to. But so I'm set to go. Meryl and I are going to take a little trip down there. The way it sounds, we've never been to New Orleans anyway, so what the hell. Here's Myron using the beast. Look at the chunks that are coming up with that tool. It's amazing. Trenton was our class clown. He was making jokes all the time and just a wonderful human being. He left here at the end of the project and went up north to another experimental archaeology guy I know, and he said, you know Trenton Durfee? I said, yeah. He said, well, he came up, he's a nice guy. You know. All right. So anyway, here's what the shavings look like with the adzing, or with the gouging. So he's using the beast, he's using, these 2 other guys are using the other gouges. So you get these nice long pieces. I would never have thought that they'd have worked that well. This wood is really wet, but really taut. The fibers bind together. Okay, next. So there's Myron. We found out by putting the planks across, we could sit there a lot easier and chop. So that was fun. This is where the gouge broke. That's the super glue we put on it, held together for almost 2 days before it finally broke, much longer than I thought. Then we glued it again, and it held for about half a day after that.
You remember what you used?
Huh?
Glue? What kind of glue? I mean, what?
Super glue.
Just
Yeah.
like Gorilla Glue?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, the one with the little white, the little tube, the clear liquid. That you, yeah. Next.
I use Loctite mustard.
Yeah, yeah, right. And then we just Lynn, Steve realized that this was a pretty good angle. So a lot of these are shooting down the canoes now. This is a great close-up of how the beast was grabbing hold of the fibers and pulling them out. There's Sedona. She made it in one. Okay, next. So this is the 22nd. This is the 23rd. And Myron decided that we needed some way to get the canoe. So if we put it on the water and it got away from us, we could hold on. So we wanted to put a rope on it. But he wanted to do something that would be concealed somewhat. We didn't want to do what was at Cahokia where they had the holes through the bow and they put a stick through it. So what we did is they notched out a notch and then a groove. And then he put a sharp log in there and wedged it in so that we could tie the knot and rope around that. And these two people you've probably seen. This is Glenn when he broke, the lashes came loose on the beast. So he's making cordage with the thigh rolling method. And I think he made like 75 feet or something like that to fix that. Next. Marilyn, you're going to love this picture. I put that sweaty back in there just because I knew it would turn you on. But that's a great picture of Abel. It was during this part of the project, it was 96, 97 degrees, and the humidity at Kinsella wasn't much better. So there was a lot of sweating going on. And here they are still chopping it in the canoe. We're getting close to the end. But we had 2 bags of ice each day. One bag was for the water, and one was to soak your hands and arms in. There were people that could not open their hands. Myron was one of them. 2 weeks after the project, I called him, and he still was having trouble with his hands. So these guys, I just can't tell you what they did for this project. Here's the first aid kit. They're using it a little bit more. Here, it's getting close to the end of the project. Yes.
Barry took him to a spring also.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he took him to a spring up near above Kinsella.
Yeah, we take a 10-gallon igloo cooler up there and fill it with water and bring back, and then it took the place of it. Well, we have still have that cooler, but like I said, every day we were so, our joints were just elbows, our wrists were just, like he said, just locked up from hours and hours of just chipping.
So we're getting close to the end of the project, and I'm figuring, well, I better start taking the after pictures of the tools. So that's what I'm doing here. I've got my scale set up, and I'm taking pictures. Hopefully we can share. We had like 7 or 8 pictures of each piece, and a lot of close-ups too, to hopefully show the use where. Next. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you go back? Yep. All right. This is also when they started making the paddles. And the paddles were made out of the bark, right there, that we took off the tree. We had a guy that was working down Southern Illinois that wanted the bark for a bark lodge, and we said, oh yeah, we'll save it. Well, he never showed it. So they just made the bark and made 7 or 8 paddles. They work pretty good too, I'll tell you that. Next. Okay, there's Grizz playing the flute for a little bit to just get things going. This is the ads again after it broke. There's the second chip, but that spot in there still worked like a charm. And then Karen and Norma, here's soaking that hands, get the circulation back. Here's that split in the front that we would tie to, and there's a groove on this side, and it snaps in. So the only way it would come out is to come out backwards. And we figured we weren't going to pull the canoe backwards at all. So then once we got, this is the other gouge, and it's still in fairly good shape at that time. Next. Okay, 26, the day it will live in infamy. We got it done. They were rubbing everything and edging everything, trying to get it a little smoother. There's that log. This is the side that goes in. This was already cut. So we loaded it on the truck. We took it up down to Campsville, or Hardin, and that was the only public scale we could find for the Farm Service. So it was a free scale. So we went down there, took everything out of it, weighed it, and then brought it to the Illinois River and put it in. We had maybe 100 people, all the field school students, everybody's all waiting. It was really good. Next. And it had a leak. And there was a knot that we were worried about, but didn't think it would actually cause a problem. So we loaded it back up, brought it back to McCully, and then I had to leave with many things that I had going on. My truck shot craps for 3 days. My tree fell on my fireplace. We had my daughter went in the hospital. It was like I couldn't get there. I was hoping to spend the night, go around the campfire and talk to everybody. None of that happened. So here they are unloading the canoe, and then Myron said, I can patch that. So he took pitch and beeswax, made a little makeshift stove, cleaned out the hole with a Remy knife. Next. And then found this pot to put it in. So one of the students had made a pot, so that's what he did. Heated it up and then poured it into the hole. Next. By God, it worked. So here they are the next day, on the 27th, putting the canoe in the water at Campsville Landing. And here, Barry and Myron and Trent and Grizz, and then Barry, Karen, Glenn, and Grizz. And here they were passing a barge coming up the river from them. Next, we had a safety boat in case anybody was worried. And the guy that owned the boat was the maintenance man at McCully. And he had a bunch of life preservers. Everybody in the boat is sitting on a life preserver. You do not, in Illinois, you do not have to have a life preserver on. You have to have it in the boat. Well, everybody's butt was hurting from those splinters. So then we took it back to Hardin and had it reweighed. And the canoe ended up being about 1,600 pounds. Now, that canoe is never dried out. So we have it in the barn at Campsville. They just got their grant to move a building, their museum, over to where the office is, on higher ground. Once they move that, then this canoe will go in as an experimental archaeology project. In the meantime, it's going to be drying out. I will guarantee you it will lose 500 pounds. And that's what we're hoping for. 1,000 pounds, we get 10 guys, maybe handle that. So anyway, I have a fear of water because I almost drowned when I was a kid. So the dock, we're on the edge of the loading dock is right there. So, now I think I wish I had gone out in a little bit, but the after, next please. The after questionnaire that I sent around, the biggest question I had was, would you ever do this again? And only 10 out of the 30 answered. And each one of them was in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Oh my God, they just ruined their bodies. And they want to do this again. In fact, a week before we launched, wasn't it a week when they had the Great River Raft Race? Okay, the week before, when they saw that, they said, we got to get this canoe and bring it and put it in that raft race. And I'll bet you anything they're going to ride me like crazy to do that. So I don't know if we're going to do it or not, but whatever they want, that's what we'll do. So there's just so many people to thank. The people that gave money, CAS, ISAS, my God, all the individual contributions and everything. $100 here, $100 there. We came out that we gave whatever we had left to the photographer. And that came to about $4,000. Everybody I checked into to videotape this project was over 10,000. So Steve just did a fabulous job for us. If you ever need somebody, Marilyn had worked with him before on a Route 66 project, so it was like old homecoming week for her. Like I said, we're going to get this paper at Society of American Archaeology in April. Hopefully that's going to generate a book. Steve Bowles and I have decided if it doesn't generate a book, we're going to publish something ourselves. We have tons and tons of data. I would imagine with maybe 2,000 sheets of paper, and the girls at Kinsella said, "We love entering data like that." What do you mean? I hate even thinking of that. And they said, "Oh no, we love it. We can't wait to do it." They got done about a week ago now, so it's all in the computer. It's just now we have to sort it out and figure out what we're going to do with it. The things we'd like to do is take one tool and follow where it went, what it looked like before and after. By the way, we did take molds, so we can take, I don't think it's going to tell us a whole lot, but when Eric Callahan was at Cahokia Mounds, and he started teaching me how to make a stone cell, he said there's an angle on the bit of the axe. And I said, well, what's that angle? And he said, it's 30 degrees or something like that. And I said, well, where do you measure that angle? He said, well, right there. Oh, no, you don't. What if it's up here, an eighth of an inch away? That's going to change everything. And I never was happy with the way he talked about where you would measure it. The only way I could figure to make up for it was to make a cast of it, so we know exactly what it looks like. So those are drying in my basement. I'm sorting through the photographs, so I got a lot more to do on that, and then we got to start writing before long. So yes.
When it dries out, are you gonna soak it in a glycol solution like I did with the one that's at Cahokia Mounds?
No, it shouldn't need it because it's never been in one before.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah. So what we're doing right now, we wanted to keep it as authentic as possible, and we were thinking about using grease, animal fat, but it would have turned it rancid, and you get it in the museum, it's going to stink it up like crazy.
Right.
Then Myron said, well, is there something else we can do? And I said, well, yeah, linseed oil. He said, well, where'd they get linseed oil? You know. So the other thing is, when it goes to the museum, it may have to be fireproof. Cahokia Mounds, some of the stuff in there has to be fireproof. So I'm thinking we couldn't put much on it that was going to prevent that from penetrating. So what we're doing is we're going with linseed oil and almost like a turpentine. And I go up there every couple of weeks. I was just up there to cancel a map in, and it's doing fine. It's got some hairline cracks, but that's to be expected. There's nothing major going on. So the girls are keeping track of it, and I'll just go up there a couple times every month or so and take a look at it. And otherwise, Myron will kill me. So, yes.
Do you have someone who's going to do the use wear analysis?
We haven't yet.
Well, Rachel Campbell did her master's thesis on groundstone tools. So I don't know.
Yeah. Never get a hold of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey Larry, we have about 7 minutes before we have to wrap it up because
Okay.
it's about 18 till, but we do have a question from the computer. Somebody said, let's see, they want to know if it's this Greg Wilson. He said, sorry you logged in late. What did you learn about the effectiveness of adzes and different shapes and sizes? Specifically, I'm wondering how the functional difference between the shorter and wider late woodland adzes and the longer and thinner Mississippian adzes. I'm also interested in what you learned about the effectiveness of different sizes of celts.
We had Dalton adzes and no Mississippian adzes. Well, I have one, a little Mill Creek one that Toby Morrow made for me. It works fine, but it's just a long time, it's a small cut. We would love to have had those wide Mississippian ones that are kind of bent. Boy, that would have been beautiful. Barry?
Yeah, if anybody was just wanting to know just how the canoe handled it, it was exceptional in the water. It traveled really nice. You know, we all had aspects of thinking it'd want to roll or be tipsy, and it was so stable. It was stabler than any canoe I've ever been in. We could stand up, walk around. They actually switched spots, went over top of one another. We were worried about it being so heavy that it wouldn't track in the water, that we'd have to constantly be like lugging it. Yeah, it tracked beautiful. It just tracked, and I mean, it worked really, really well. So it wasn't, you know.
Wow, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, it just beyond our expectations of how it reacted to the water and how it traveled and everything. It did really nice.
And for Steve or Greg's question, we just don't know. The Dalton just worked okay, but the gouges from the northwest coast just outshot everything. Yeah, everything was useless compared to those. Yes?
Do you have an estimate on man and woman hours?
It was 451 man hours. Not a lot, but some of those hours were kids that just came in to chop on the canoe, or tourists would stop by and just want to say they were on it. So, but we have all that down. I imagine that's going to be about 20 or 30 hours. So it's not going to affect things very much. When you compare and that's cutting down the tree too. So if you compare most dugout canoes, they haven't kept this kind of information, but if you compare them, they never put in the time it took to cut out the canoe. That's 3 days. You eliminate that. Yeah, you're talking, was it 200 and some hours on that? So this was, it was 15 days altogether. You take out the 3 days for the cutting the tree down, we're down to 12 days. That's pretty good. And 451 man hours is almost unbelievable. That's why we kept really good records, because everybody else, I know McPherson made one out in Kansas, and he said it took him 2 days to cut the tree down. He had, I think it was 17, 18-year-old boys. And the rottenest axes I've ever seen in my life. You couldn't cut anything with it, and it was a cottonwood, yeah.
We read about the canoes that are so much longer and held so many people. Did you, like, your canoe was sitting pretty low in the ground. Did you feel like it could, or in the water, did you feel like it could hold a higher capacity, or was it like?
If we'd have made it thinner, it was getting to the point, it was a consensus that we had it thin enough, and everybody was just worn out. They had to get, they had lives to lead, and it took 3 or 4 days longer than most of them expected. Emil had his wife and 2 kids there. They were camping out the whole time. And he ran out of money. We actually had, Myron had a scholarship fund with about 600, and I had a little fund for somebody that was coming and didn't show up, so we gave him that money. And he had to leave the day before. He was there to watch it.
His daughter, they got a hotel in St. Louis for a couple days to give his wife and daughter a break from all the camping, and his daughter broke her arm over there too while they were over there. So we did. It was 11 miles, right? It was 11 miles. We took it. It was like 4.5
something like
4.5 hours. So I mean, we made pretty good time. I mean, 11 miles, and and we wanted to have plenty of space between us, because we were rolling. I mean, we could have hauled some supplies between us, probably some more supplies, but.
Now, they were riding about that far out of the water. Myron said on the other side of the canoe, he was about this far. He was kind of anxious about that. But if we lose 400 pounds or 500 pounds when that canoe drives out, I think we'd get 2 more people in that canoe.
How many people did you have in it? How many people were in the canoe?
Oh, we only took 4 at a time.
4?
Yeah, we changed. They went to Michael Landing and then changed a few people, and then went to Godar Landing and took a couple people changed there, and then went down to Hardin River Dock Restaurant. Yes?
Why does it matter which way the rope is twisted?
What's that?
Why does it matter which way the rope is twisted?
because the fibers have to try to back off each other. So if you're twisting the fibers to the right, when you make the rope, you need to twist them to the left. When the fibers try to unwrap, they buck each other. And that's why the rope stays together. So when we got the rope done,
It's 3 strands.
the first time, we just put it on the ground, there it went. It all unwrapped.
Individual strands have to
I
go
gotta
this
get my
way.
water.
and the whole thing has to
Will somebody help Larry carry some of the stuff out?
I think we're just about out of time. We're 10 minutes till and we have to be out by 8.
Okay.
So, you wanna,
Thank you all for coming. And I'm so sorry for the delay.
We got a lot done. We had a meeting before.
Yeah.
We had a new